Dare I say hello to all the Dash players? Well, yes, this is Mansant back again with today's installment of the Best of 3 series, this time taking a look at the Dash matchup in Blitz. And while we may not see Dash very often in Blitz, she is a deck that if she draws hot, just actually deals insane damage. Dash has access to two very powerful cards if everything goes correctly in Maximum Velocity and High Octane. High Octane is going to enable Dash to shoot her pistol for untold amount of damage, and of course Maximum Velocity is going to come in for a whopping 10. So as an aggro deck with not many hit effects, Dash is just trying to overwhelm with raw damage, which is actually pretty similar to what Levia wants to do. The only difference being that Dash is going to burn through her deck with all the boosting that she does. And boosting adds a bit of variance to what Dash is doing as well, in that she can banish her power cards, and if that happens, well, she just doesn't have a lot of quality left in her deck. So when you're playing against Dash, the main thing that you want to watch out for is really Combustible Courier's hit effect. If it hits, it's going to give the next attack that turn +3. And anything else is just basically raw damage. And raw damage is nothing to scoff at. Levia loves it when she can interact with actual hit effect threats and then provide her own overwhelming raw damage back into the opponent, but you're kind of even on that front in this matchup. And on top of that, Dash actually has very decent 2-card hands as well. Something like a blue and Pedal to the Metal can equal 9 damage because they can actually pitch a blue to the pedal and then use Teklo Foundry Heart to gain an extra resource, and then come at you with the pistol, go again, reload the pistol, and shoot for 9 total. Potentially even more if that's a throttle. That would be 10 damage. So they actually have pretty good 2-card hand plays similar to you. So this is just kind of who draws better, who gets on the front foot first. It's your classic aggro matchup, and honestly, it tends to favor Dash a little bit because they have more power cards in the High Octane and the Maximum Velocity. Whereas as the Levi player, you really only have Blood Rush Bellows in this build to try to match that threat. So the other part of this matchup that can kind of go your way is, of course, you have access to Carrion Husk, which is incredible block, but it's not really covering up anything too important because they don't have a lot of hit effects. So this matchup is just balls to the wall aggro, do what you can, throw your hands at each other, and see who comes out on top. So let's get into it. So here we go with the gameplay, and already on the left, you'll recognize a familiar set of hands in Tom, who once again has joined me for the YouTube channel here. He's always sticking it out playing these games with me, so big shout out to him. And he did win the die roll as well, and Tom elects to go first. That's because Dash is, yes, an aggressive deck, and aggressive decks like to go second if they can just start threatening the tempo game of taking cards from their opponent already. But Dash requires a little bit of setup to have really optimal turns. Setting up a 5-card hand with that arsenal is insane for Dash's ability to play cards like High Octane and Maximum Velocity to full effectiveness. So Tom actually has everything going for him turn 1. He can overpitch as much as he wants into the induction chamber and Tekla Core to trim all of the blues and yellows out of his hand to find more aggressive cards. And he even has a Tekla Core to play with that Maximum Velocity and Arsenal. So I am straight terrified. Of course, I guess I don't actually know that his setup is as good as it is, but even with just the Steam counters on his stuff and the Tekla Core in play, he definitely is set up to have a smashing start into me here. And my start, although it is, I guess, decent with that Ghostly Visit being able to get set up in the graveyard, it's really nothing crazy. I mean, I am fortunate here to find both of my defense reactions as early as it is in this game because I really want to protect that health before Husk goes down. So with Sink Below and Arsenal and a Fate Foreseen in hand, I'm hoping to be able to tough out the majority of his aggro turn here, but I'm really not keen on blocking too much until I see that threat in his turn. So he's starting off with some really small cards here. The blue 0 to 60 only pinging me for 2. The blue Zipper Hit only coming in for 3. These aren't going to threaten Husk, so I'm playing a little greedy, thinking that he has more plays coming, and he definitely does in that Maximum Velocity. I don't know he does, but, you know, I am holding those defense reactions in the hopes that there's bigger payoff, and I will be rewarded for that choice. Now, at 15 life, already on my turn, I guess the back of my turn 1 here, It's not great. It's not great for sure, especially since my hand is not set up to be aggro at all. So this is really not ideal for me at all because this just gives Tom the forward momentum for sure. I don't have a strong swing back into him, and he was able to burn through a ton of my health, potentially threaten Husk, and he still has that Techlicore set up for next turn as well. That card gets tons of value over the course of 2 turns. So he's going to keep going, and this is what I was hoping to see, that there is some stronger attack coming down the line where my defense reactions will get maximum value. And as we're about to see here, I kind of made the correct call a little bit by luck in this instance on holding those defense reactions to try to cover up the maximum amount of damage possible. Tom is able to not only reload the pistol and induction, but with the Teklo Foundry Heart to get the extra resources, he still has enough even for the maximum velocity with Goliath Gauntlet. So all of a sudden he's coming in for 12 on the back of that already insane turn. So this is what those defense reactions can help me accomplish here in covering up maximum damage in an aggro race like this. But boy oh boy is this still incredibly overwhelming. The only requirement for playing that maximum velocity is having boosted 3 times this turn, which he absolutely did. So yeah, he is slamming me with this 12 damage. Now, I actually have the capability here of not losing Husk, funny enough. So I've got 3 block on my equipment, and then I've got another 8 block available to me in the defense reactions. So that's going to full block, or not full block, it's going to block 11, meaning I only take 1, which does not threaten Husk. So that's kind of insane that I'm able to withstand what I did on that turn. And this is really only because of that defense reaction double draw. Otherwise, Husk was getting sacked this turn into maximum velocity, which really would not have been ideal because I don't have a way to turn off Blood Debt, so I really don't want to start throwing things in the Banish Zone. That is just free damage, and in an aggro match, free damage that you're basically giving to your opponent to help kill you is so, so terrible. So my hand, not ideal, not ideal. I do get to put a Blood Rush in Arsenal here, and at least swing with a Mandible Claw. And this is in the hopes that I draw into a pretty sweet 4-card hand that is playable with Blood Rush. I ideally need a blue to get things started, and then at least 2 other 6s in hand, and something I can either block with, or perhaps it's even another 6. So that's what I'm hoping for. And it's actually kind of funny, if you look at health here, I'm in theory winning the health trade, and I only swung with Ghostly Visit and Claw. If you think about how much Tom swung at me, that's kind of hilarious that I haven't used Husk yet, and I'm still ahead on life. Now, it won't last long. I definitely also threw in a ton of block with my Scabskins and my Skullcap, but, you know, take the little mental victories while you can. Tell you what, though, what is not going for me is my hand at the moment. I drew pretty much, I think that was either an all red hand or perhaps I had 1 yellow. Either way, no blues, and a blue would have unlocked the potential to actually just tank all of this and try for a Blood Rush, but no blue there. That sucks. Instead, I'm forced to then just play down a Boneyard Marauder, because at least Boneyard Marauders are fine in an all red hand. They can at least present some threat, and let me just keep pushing through decent damage while I find more powerful cards. So I get to pitch a red Endless Maw coming in for 6 on that Boneyard Marauder. This is also hopefully turning off Blood Debt, and I already have the Blood Debt ticking up now with the Husk, so I am pretty much forced to make these plays anyway. I'm really just hoping now, I don't have the Carrion Husk to back me up anymore, but I'm hoping that I can just draw that Blood Rush hand. That's all I need to do to potentially flip this game around, because Tom is starting to lose block on his equipment. He doesn't have an arsenal set up to potentially do more than like an average 12 damage turn, so perhaps I can survive and Blood Rush him on the flip. But you know what? Once again, I do not draw an ideal Blood Rush hand, and that is just such a bummer. You really want to lead with a blue on your Blood Rush turns, because that in and of itself is paying for the Blood Rush and your first Claw swing. When you when you start a Blood Rush turn with a yellow, it is just so inefficient. You're left with one floating, which means you need to pitch another blue to then swing double claws and then pitch something else to finish off your attack. So you basically never unlock the Boneyard Marauder 18 damage turn with starting with the yellow. It just doesn't happen. And it means you need to draw pretty perfectly on the backside of the Blood Rush. So never like those odds. It's really so much safer to start with the blue, but I may be too much in my own head at this point because I could have forced the Blood Rush here. It wouldn't have been great, but I at least had the Hungering Slaughter Beast as a 6, the Writhing Beast Hulk as a 6, and then the Blood Rush in hand as a yellow pitch to at least force it out. The Sigil, of course, I could have burned out of hand just to gain 3. So that might have just been the correct line here, to try to just force a Blood Rush through to at least present some threat, because I've basically taken that play off the table for myself by going ahead and blocking with that Hungering Slaughter Beast. So I guess I'm respecting a little bit the potential dominate that the high speed impact can give his next attack, but I really don't think I should. I mean, in my own intro to this video, I mentioned that it's just raw damage. So I think this is probably wrong. Very, very wrong. And we'll see how it plays out. Tom, of course, can keep going. He's gaining those resources with the Teklo Foundry Core. He can, since he's boosted this turn, just gain free resources. It's of course at the cost of cards in his deck, but this is not a matchup where he's worried about really getting to second cycle ever, so he's free to just use Teklo Core every turn if he wants to until the game is over. So here comes another high speed impact, and I have to take that damage at this point. Taking once again the damage from the pistol here, and he's gonna just go ahead at the end of his turn, refill and arsenal. So now I'm really scared. I needed a good turn on the flip into this because he's gonna have a 5-card hand plus Teklo Core. So I really misplayed by just taking that Blood Rush play away from myself and blocking with the Hungering. So really feeling bad about that now, because this play is just never gonna win me the game here. Just coming in for a 6 with the Dominate keyword just does nothing when Tom is happily going to keep 5 cards and the extra 2 resources from Teklo as well. Very, very unfortunate how I played that turn, and it will likely cost me the game, so don't make that mistake. If you're going to force a Blood Rush, do it just because you need to present lethal on these aggro decks or you'll just get outpaced. And sure enough, he took the full 6 of that attack. It just means nothing. That damage just didn't threaten anything. Tom can just slam me with his whole hand. And he does have a high octane in hand as well, so this is going to mean his turn is disgusting. Every single one of these boosts that he hits, which in this deck it's actually 100% of the boosts because it's only Mechanologist cards in the deck, is not only going to give him go again, but the high octane is going to give him a spare action point. And with those spare action points, he can just use them to continuously shoot the pistol as long as he can pay to refill it, because the pistol is not a once per turn attack. So with every boost card comes an extra shot from the Teklo Core, and we're just looking really rough right here. My arsenal is not an attack that turns off Blood Debt. It is, of course, that Blood Rush that I've been trying to wait to play, but I waited a bit too long. I really just don't have the option here to hold cards because I will definitely die to the amount of damage that he can present. And the other problem presenting itself now is that since I used my equipment so early, the breakpoint of Combustible Courier coming in at 4 is so terrible for me because he's just going to get that free extra 3 damage because I can't block it efficiently. So that is always going to go through. It's going to give that next attacky boost +3 and just spell disaster for me on the defense here. So I just have to hope maybe he just doesn't have another boost card. That'd be nice. But of course, that's not the case. So instead, he is going to go ahead and Foundry Heart to gain some extra resources here. And actually, this is technically not how things work anymore. Teklo Core would break the combat chain, so Combustible Courier would not give the bonus on this next attack, but neither of us caught it in the moment, so we are treating that Combustible Courier as if it is coming in for 7. So, a little unfortunate. I mean, I was going to die anyway because I can't keep enough cards to turn off Blood Debt. So there he goes. He just gets to pistol an extra 4 times total this turn, as long as he can pay for it. So yeah, it is just over anyway. Board state getting sloppy, but you know what? It is game. Just go through the motions here, and there we go. Over. So then we're just going to jump into game 2 here, where I now get the choice first or second, and I'm going to choose first. Now, I choose first in Levia. I mean, I don't know if I've said this explicitly before, but it's really because you need 1 card in graveyard on your first turn, ideally, because that means that when your opponent swings back into you, you can then block with 2 cards. That'll put you at 3 cards in grave, and that can start the trade pattern that's really effective for you. So if you miss getting 1 card into grave for free on turn 1, that is a big deal. It really sucks. I mean, Arsenal is good and all, but it's really all about that magic number of 1 card in grave. Unfortunately, my hand wasn't going to let me do that safely. With those Deadwood Rumblers, yes, you can play them on turn 1, but if your odds are likely to hit a Blood Debt card on the discard, you really don't want to do that because you're forced to banish, and it will always hit that Blood Debt card, and you will be sad. So, Tom's turn, pretty mild, honestly. He just comes in for 5, refills his stuff, and arsenals, so I am fine with that for sure. We're just going to force a Blood Rush, and it's definitely not going to be insane. I didn't have an arsenal attack, so I'm not guaranteed to actually follow up anything too big here. But looks like I drew at least enough here to swing Claws, plus I can then pitch for the Writhing Beastalk and set up an attack in arsenal, so that's looking decent for me at least. A little lucky on the draws on that Blood Rush because it was risky to just force it there. But it is an aggro matchup, right? So you just have to hope that your aggro is better than their aggro. And when it works out, it works out. So here we go. Coming in for a total of 13 this turn, which is above average, but it's not insane. This has given me a pretty decent life lead. And that I'm very comfortable with because 11 is something I can now hopefully present as soon as I find a decent go again turn, or of course another Blood Rush. So Tom is going to start with his own high octane turn though, and this is kind of the battle of the power cards. Was my Blood Rush good enough to put me ahead compared to how much his high octane is going to hurt me? Now, I do still have Husk up, but it doesn't necessarily gain a lot of value on a high octane turn because high octane's damage is pumped into a lot of the increments of 2 with the Techlo pistol over and over and over again. And if we look at my hand, it is really awkward into his power turn here too, because I have a Hungering Slaughter Beast, which is, of course, decent to play, but my graveyard's at 1, and I really don't have a good way to fill it. I have a Doomsday and a Reckless Swing in hand, plus a Ghostly Visit, so sure, I can safely block with the Ghostly, but I need another card in grave, and I can't get Doomsday there, and I can't get Reckless Swing there, so this is really, really awkward. Reckless Swing and Doomsday together in the same hand is also just terrible overall unless you can instantly summon the Plasmafet token, which of course I can't here because I only have the 1 Blood Debt so far. So this is just the epitome of awkward, and knowing how bad my hand blocks, I have to throw in Husk here because I'm under threat of it breaking anyway. Unfortunately, I'm losing block value there because I'm only blocking a 4 with that 0 to 60 red and the Husk, so losing some block value there, which in an aggro matchup you really don't want to do that. You want to be so efficient with your blocks and what you cover up, but it's just not going to work out, unfortunately. And then with all those extra action points that High Octane gave Tom, he can just pound me with that pistol, but you know what, Husk is already gone, so it's not like these breakpoints really matter anymore. It's just raw damage, and raw damage is definitely scary, but at least I can just tank it. This is kind of that mid-game where I can tank damage and not be too afraid of it. I just really need to hope I can cobble something together with my turn, and all I've really got going for me on my turn is the ability to hope and pray that Scabskins rolls either a 4, 5, or 6. That's really the only way my turn becomes any kind of decent. If I roll just a 1 on Scabs, then, or the 1 action point on Scabs, then all I can do is swing Deadwood and hope that I draw discard a 6, because at this point, taking 2 to Blood Debt would be terrible. Terrible, terrible. Just free damage for Tom here. But if I do get the multiple action points on Scabskins, then I can pitch out the first card to play Ghostly Visit, and then play the Deadwood Rumbler. And that way I know that I at least won't have any non-6s in hand to get started. And luckily that Scabskins roll does hit 2 action points there. Like, I really, really needed that to go my way. So coming in with Ghostly, once again, this is all just to increase my odds of actually drawing and discarding a 6. And as well, it does present lethal. That was 12 damage total when Tom had 11 life. So cool, it forces some interaction, and there we go. I do hit the 6, so everything went my way on the flip, but it still was not great by any means. I didn't have an ideal turn. I had to play really clunky, and of course, if I hadn't hit the 2 action points on Scabs, this just would have been like absolutely game over. So in the aggro race here, you do have to get a little bit lucky, right? Both decks have some luck to them with the randomness that Tom has on the banishes, and then the randomness Levia has with her banishes. Different way of banishing, but you know, it is both banishing mechanics. So lose my arsenal. Really don't have anything too crazy going for me. Tom still has a arsenal here and 3 cards in hand. So it's gonna be definite damage he throws my way. Will it be enough for lethal? Honestly, probably. It most likely always can be lethal here when he has enough resources to shoot pistol twice and string in some other go again cards. So he either goes for that or he tries to once again set up a 5-card hand. And setting up a 5-card hand, he probably is a bit safe to do it here because I don't have anything too powerful. I don't have an arsenal set up, and I don't have any recursion pieces in the banish zone, so I'm playing pretty naked with just what I draw off the top. But he is going to present lethal. I mean, he definitely should if he could. So there he goes for 7 dominate. It's going to have go again, and so in total here, he can present 9 with what's on board, 7 with this current attack, and then another 2 with the pistol if he so chooses. So I'm a little scared on this one, but at least I can set it up so that I get good Arknight Skullcap value. By going down to 3, this then means I can fully cover that pistol. Feels so good when you do this late game because sometimes it can be hard to get full use on the Skullcap. But pulled it out there. I'm going to be sitting at 3. I'm playing 3 cards into his 4, and I can definitely present lethal no matter what. So I'm really hoping here to hit the Ghostly Visit. That would help me reset my arsenal here, which is very, very important when the game is this tight. But who knows? Maybe I miss, and oh, would you look at that? I definitely do. So that just means this Blue Dread Screamer is coming in for 4. I am fortunate enough here to have the Boneyard Marauder to follow up, so I at least have a play, even though I missed the Ghostly Visit. I'm going to lose out on Arsenal, but I'm forcing 2 cards out of Tom's hand because he's at 3. So this still worked out definitely in my favor here. And that's really because I'm safe from having to block with 2 cards in this state of the game. Tom was forced to block down with 3, but with his ability to shoot in with the pistol, I have enough equipment that I can soak one of the shots with equipment pieces, and the other shot, yes, will have to go to a card. But, you know, that means I will play into Tom with 3 cards, and I will always present enough for him to have to block down with 2. So that does let me then, in theory, set up an arsenal with that extra card that I have advantage over him, and that's going to be the difference maker in a game that is this tight. So pretty happy with how things are looking. With Tom only passing there, it's really because he couldn't present lethal, so might as well just refill the weapons and move on. That does mean I get to save my equipment for another scenario similar to what we just saw. I'm going to roll Scabskins here because, once again, I have Ghostly Visits available, so when you have the ability to get an extra 4 damage out of your turn, you do it. But rolled a 1, thankfully not into a 1, but I didn't net that extra action point, and I'm just trying to do anything I can. I mean, I'm all over the place and just surviving at this point. I didn't have a way to guaranteed turn off Blood Debt. It was just the Deadwood Rumbler to draw discard a random card, and fortunately for me, it was a 6. So with how tight this game is, I'm really just living on a prayer. My Blood Debt's to the point where it will lethal me. Tom still has decent threat back at me because that turn I only presented 6, so he was able to keep 2 cards in hand total, which is a little threatening for me because if he decides to go wide on this turn, I'm in a really poor position to defend and turn off Blood Debt. I drew 3 reds, and then my only yellow is the card I have to play to turn off Blood Debt, so I'm actually very fortunate that Tom decides to not go wide, but of course he doesn't know that's how my hand is. It just worked out that way. So we're seeing like a lot of luck go my way, multiple turns in a row here. So this is really a game that could have gone sideways if like the last 3 turns just didn't go my way. Thank goodness they are. Thank goodness they are. I don't want to see myself go out in a very unfortunate 0-2. So I do come in for 6. I do turn off Blood Debt. This is at least going to threaten another 2 cards from Tom, but now he's got that 3 card hand because of that Arsenal card. That is pretty scary because he's always going to be a resource up as well because of Teclacore's ability to give him the free resource if all he does is boost previously in the turn. So now with that pistol leading his turn, this is going to turn on my Skullcap and my Scabskin, so that is going to soak up an entire pistol shot in its own right. So I'm pretty happy to see that. No matter what he shoots with here, I would toss Skullcap in, but he's deciding, you know what, hold on that. I'm just going to set up the Teclacore, and this way, if once again he's able to keep 2 cards, well, now he's going to be very set on resources to pay for everything, plus that extra attack that he has in Arsenal. But I am fortunate enough here to have a somewhat playable Blood Rush turn. It's actually, once again, not what I really like doing. I had to pitch a yellow there, and, you know, if I just looked a little bit more closely, I should have just played the Writhing Beast Hulk instead of played the Blood Rush, because that was just guaranteed game. Tom has no more block in his equipment, so as long as the 6 was dominated, which it would have been guaranteed with the graveyard that I had, that was just game. But I went a bit overzealous there, tried to go for Blood Rush, hoping that I could just take all the cards out of his hand and make him waste his Teclo. But unfortunately, I drew only reds there and am able to come in with the Endless Maw alone. So Endless Maw coming in for 11 though. 11 is still a big deal. It is going to threaten either 3 cards, put him at 1, or all 4 cards to keep life where he is. So he's going to decide to go ahead and block out the entire thing. This could be Respect of Reckless Swing if he's thinking about that. I mean, if he saw that I pitched it earlier and he knows that I'm only running 1, then he should probably know that it's somewhere coming up soon, but most likely still around the middle of the deck. Now, Tom full blocking, though, also still lets him have plays because of the Teclacore giving him resources here. So he can freely shoot his pistol and then just reload everything off the Teclacore, which, you know, really isn't half bad. It gives him a bit of room to block heavily like he did last turn and still have plays. So I'm just going to get the value out of Skullcap here while I can. Go ahead, put myself at 1. He doesn't have any tricky combat tricks or defense tricks that are going to kill me. So pretty safe there to go to 1. But now Tom does make the correct call. Since he can shoot the pistol for lethal, he should definitely do so and not try to preserve the steam counter on his pistol. It's not worth it in this scenario. Force a card out of my hand, because if he doesn't force a card and I have Arsenal +4 in hand, there's like almost no way that isn't game in some kind of combination. So I'm going to go ahead and just cover that up because I have to or I die. And in that case, this does give me a route to present lethal. So with the 4 cards I still have in hand here, I am able to play Barraging to fill my graveyard into a Convulsions, which actually can miss in this scenario, so I'm really hoping it doesn't, because Dominate would mean the game's over. But even if it does miss, I have a Boneyard Marauder as the last card in my hand, and it is playable after the Convulsions goes to grave here, so no matter what, I could have come in for 8 and force him to block with 2, which, I mean, that's decent. Of course, hitting the Dominate does mean it's game, so that's what we see unravel here. He's gonna, yeah, take 4 and lose game 2. So that ties us at 1-1 going into the last game here. What a crazy series this has been. I didn't expect Dash to be such a fierce... I mean, yes, I guess I did expect Dash to be such a fierce opponent when they're just crazy aggro like this, but the games have been really tight, and I'm surprised everything went my way well enough last game to actually pull out the win. So this has been fun so far. And I think the game 3 here is going to really be the telling match, because these decks do perform pretty evenly. It's just up to Levia to not get unlucky, and they seem to be pretty fairly matched. So in these aggro matchups, of course, the pressure to get unlucky is a lot higher because you're living on a knife's edge. But, you know, as we saw last game, when you just don't get unlucky, living on a knife's edge still gets you the win. So hoping for another pretty fun match here. I got a ideal turn 1 off because all Tom did was sink resources into his pistol and induction chamber and then arsenal pass. So that gave me my hand for free into Tom, which was a Howl into Ghostly for 7. And that dealt a pretty hearty amount of damage, and I was able to arsenal a blue barraging beatdown. So it's not really the ideal arsenal target, especially since my graveyard has 2 non-6s. It's just going to fill my grave with another miss, but it's at least playable. So going to go ahead, toss it in there. And what I don't expect actually ends up happening here. As we see my hand on camera, I'll talk about it because it's pretty fun. But basically, when Tom just ends his turn there, I see a line that I had not initially thought about, and I'm really not sure that Tom should have just ended his turn. He passed with 2 blue attacks in hand, so they weren't really going to present too much damage, but he's keeping these boost cards guaranteed in hand so that he can try to go for a maximum velocity on this next turn, because that's what he's got in Arsenal since turn 1. Now, since he just Teklos to end his turn, setting up for this crazy maximum velocity play, that gives me a ton of breathing room, which I didn't expect. And I do lead with that Scabskins roll, so it happened a bit ago, but it was a 1, and I am going to re-roll it here because I have just way too cool of a play coming up. I get to with 2 action points, and honestly, I could have done this without 2 action points, but 2 action points does present at least 3 more damage here, so that's pretty cool. I get to lead with the Boneyard Marauder, potentially threaten a card out of Tom's hand if he so chooses. Now, he most likely won't block with a card from hand because he's trying to set up for his own big play, but those other 2 cards in my hand are Barraging Beatdowns, reds no less. So now we see, with this extra action point and the 2 resources I have floating, I'm able to triple Barraging, which is just nuts. This almost never happens unless you purposely set it up on the bottom of the deck, but that's just how we drew here. So here we go. I'm coming in for 13 total, which Tom just actually cannot fully block. I mean, not fully block, but he can't turn off the barraging. So the 13 is going to stick. He can block with what he wants. And if he blocks with only equipment, he dies. So he's forced to block 3 here and his equipment pieces. And this is going to take away his ability to play that maximum velocity next turn. So it's just kind of hilarious this worked out in my favor. I'm going to take a little bit of blood debt because I didn't banish a 6. But you know what? That is fine. So Tom, just kind of laughing here with how unfortunate that was for him, shows me the maximum velocity just because it hurts him that he won't be able to get it off. And I do feel his pain. It is so nice to get those off, and he got it off game 1, and I did lose, so very fortunate for me. That little bit of blood debt I took probably not going to matter when I've already forced Tom down to 2, to the point where if I just top deck a Reckless Swing, I win, which is kind of hilarious. So I still have Husk to probably soak up whatever powerful turn he's throwing my way here, and that way I can lead in for something really strong on the flip and keep him full blocking out or just presenting lethal with some kind of dominate. So the one thing that my hand is not doing is giving me any kind of resources, so I am going to have to use that Sink Below to try to dig for something better. I ideally want to find like a yellow pitch because I'm really not going to roll for Scabskins here to potentially get that Ghostly Visit back in play, and that's really because I don't have Gambler's Gloves anymore, and the way I lose is just rolling a 1 and passing a turn like this into Tom. So as long as I find some kind of resource, yellow or blue, which I do on the Sink Below, find a Blue Dread Screamer, I can go ahead and at least swing with the Writhing Beastalk, and it might get Dominate for game. I do have the 1/6 in graveyard now from the Boneyard I played last turn, so if I hit that, that is just game already on my turn 3, which is insane. You love to see it. You don't get games like this very often. I will say this series has been very kind of like sideways lucky for Levia. I didn't get insane blood rushes. I just scraped through with really strange plays throughout, and sometimes those plays still get you the win. So here we go, Writhing Beastalk. Do I hit the Boneyard Marauder? If I do, it is game. Tom can block with the Skullcap and 1 card from hand, but he will still take 2 damage on that. So there we go, hits the Boneyard. That is 6 Dominate. That is game. What can you do, Tom? What can you do? You can just cry facing the might of Levia. So look at that. He takes 2. You know what? In the reaction window, why not? I'll gain 3. Yeah, feel it, Tom. Feel it. Levia is just that good.